Hello, Megan. Welcome to the Feminine Frequency. I'm really excited and also super curious as we land in this space because there's so much that I am wanting to learn about your journey and also about your work. And yeah, I'm really excited to have you here.
My God, thank you so much for having me on this epic feminine frequency podcast. I cannot wait to dive in.
Yeah. And we were connected through a mutual friend of ours, Audrey. And
Shout
when
out.
Yeah, it's best. And when she shared your work with me, I was like, wow, there is a frequency that you embody and in your presence, in your art, in your work that I know would be really, really expansive for my podcast listeners. And so I'm excited for our conversation today, which is really, we have such similar missions and we also have different flavors and we have
Yeah.
different ways that we express. But there is a resonance of two women sitting here right now who are living from their embodied feminine power. And so I
Yes.
know that it's a journey to get there. And I'd love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about how you came into your own feminine power and what that means to you.
So, how it all started. Let's see. It started 11 years ago. I was working at Soul Cycle. I was in what I thought was like a year off from college. I had, just a year left before graduating, and it didn't feel right, and I felt pretty lost, and I literally just felt like, like if anyone has seen American Beauty, I felt like this like bag just like floating in the wind, like not knowing what my purpose was or what to do. I developed a real fixation like on my body, like getting my body to look perfect. I just thought that if I could present as like the most beautiful version of myself, then I would be loved and a man would come and save me and I wouldn't have to worry about the world because I just didn't feel strong enough for the world, honestly. And I was over exercising, and Soul Cycle is amazing, but I was like really, really hyper focused on just getting my body to look a specific way. And there was, some light aspects to that, like exercise and movement. I started to realize that was like my first experience with spiritual embodiment in those Soul Cycle rooms of being like, oh, there's something here, right? And I had it in my mind, okay, so I'm going to be a fitness instructor. Like, that's just what I'm going to do with my life. And then at 22, I got smacked down and my health completely deteriorated. So I could no longer run on the treadmill. I could no longer run away from all of the things that I was running away from. I literally was stripped of all of my life force energy. I developed scary neurological symptoms. I started having trouble breathing, having trouble thinking, and I just felt my health completely falling apart to the point where I had to move back home with my parents, and God bless them. They were so supportive. I got into a couple of fender benders like in my car because I was experiencing neurological symptoms that I couldn't understand. So they were driving me to these doctor's appointments. And for 6 months, it was basically this like rat race of like, okay, what's wrong with Megan? And finally, 6 months in, I got a Lyme disease diagnosis, and not just a Lyme disease diagnosis, but a chronic Lyme disease diagnosis with like all of the co-infections. And I never seen a tick bite on my body. I don't know when it happened, and it felt very random, but symptoms had a specific frequency to it. And anyone who's dealt with Lyme will know what I'm talking about, but it felt scary. Like it literally felt like a monster was like hiding under my bed and I couldn't get it out. But I hadn't really like started my spiritual awakening, like for real, until that year, really, because I had an amazing imagination and I was very intuitive and I was like manifesting and like, thinking positively and like all this. And then I just got like smacked down into like the darkest period of my life. And I was like, manifesting isn't working. Manifesting is not working anymore. And I was stripped of everything that I thought made me who I was. So the way that my body looked, the way that I presented, my happy demeanor, my bubbly, like, yeah, like I'm just chilling, I'm here. And I really got brought to my knees. And for the first 2 years, I tried everything that one diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease is supposed to do at first. So I did like over a year of antibiotics. I did IV ozone therapy. I did all of the supplements. I felt like a guinea pig because no one really knows exactly how to cure chronic Lyme disease. They just sort of throw all of these treatments at you. But my body was just being put through the ringer with all of these treatments. I'm a very sensitive individual. The inner world was not being addressed. And so 2 years in, I had to take a look and I was just like, okay, so I actually feel sicker than when I started. And when I first got diagnosed, I thought it would just be 3 months of antibiotics and then I'd be done. I really just got brought to my knees and I was like, okay, so if I continue to do all of the treatments that my doctors are recommending, even though my body is screaming at me, no, this isn't it, this isn't the way, then I will continue to go down this path. If I stop doing these treatments and learn how to heal myself, there's this fear of maybe I won't heal because they're telling me you need these things to get better. And I would have done anything to get better. So I had to take a bet on myself. And there was this moment one night in the bath where I was so sick of just being like poked and prodded. And I felt like I was constantly like, there was constantly like IVs in me and pills down my throat. And like, I literally just, this guttural, primal energy from my womb just like shoved me under the water. And I screamed so loud. And it's almost like that scream just like shattered the fear. And the scream was just like, stop running. Please stop running. Go within. So I found somatic therapy. At that point, I told my doctors I was going to take a different route to heal myself. I found an amazing wise woman who initiated me onto this deep feminine path. Her name is Dr. Stephanie. Shout out. She lives in San Anselmo. Found trauma healing. I found EFT. I found womb healing, like all of these things that actually moved the needle and helped me get my health back. And I want to say like about 3 months in to my work with my somatic practitioner, I had almost like an ayahuasca-like experience, but completely sober, right? Like completely sober, no psychedelics involved. But she took me to the deepest point of pain in my body. And it wasn't just 2 years of unfelt emotions. It was a lifetime. And for the first time in my entire life, I had someone sitting next to me saying, you're going to feel all of this. I don't care how loud your scream is. I don't care how ugly your cry is. I don't care how long it takes for you to feel it. I'm not going to leave. That was literally the first time anyone in my life had given me permission to come fully undone and be fully honest about who I am. And just the energy of that cracked me open. And I felt like the devastation of what had happened to me. At that point, I was 24. I didn't know if I'd ever get better. I was literally like needing help walking up the stairs. I had an oxygen tank. Like it was really, really bad. And I just felt the grief of like this little girl in me who never thought that this was like what her life would look like. And then I felt all of the years of suppression because I'm a fiery bitch. Can I swear on this podcast? I'm a fiery ass bitch, right? But that energy wasn't really allowed when I was growing up, like in society. And so I suppressed and suppressed and suppressed and just became like this perfect good girl who's a size 2 and she's like lovable. I just felt all of the suppression and I, again, let out this giant primal scream. And at the end of the scream, I was like plummeted into this psychedelic experience where I had this visualization of this cave. And I walked into the cave and there was this woman standing in the middle of the cave. It was so visceral. Like it was just completely felt so real because it was. And she was standing in the middle of the cave completely naked. Her hair was like wild and free. And I walked up to her and I saw that she was me. And she told me, my name is Violet and I am you without your fear, without all of your diagnoses, without all of your labels. I am you completely free. And are you ready for me now? Because she tried to come out, when I was a teenager, but I didn't have the maturity to like really hold that deep feminine energy in my body. I wasn't initiated yet. I didn't know how to deal with that. But at 24, I had nothing left to lose, right? And so I was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And what happened over the next 2 years was just a complete miracle. I ultimately reached a state of complete remission, no Lyme, left in my body. I burned away everything that I never was, all of the masks, all of the shoulds, all of the roles that women learn to play to stay safe, gone. And I took back everything that I had ever exiled within myself, everything that I had ever suppressed. And I reclaimed it as holy, as my own. This real, like, unfuckwithable energy just came forth in me. And honestly, that's when I became a woman, like not a girl, but a woman. That is what initiated me onto this deep feminine path. Shortly after I reached a state of remission, I wrote my book, Strange and Unusual Creatures. And then I met my husband before that, actually, like immediately after like 5 years of celibacy. I just met him, first date back on the market. And then I started my business, Her Alchemy, and the rest is history. And now I help women get in touch with this like life-saving, deep feminine energy that is not really made space for in today's society until a woman decides, you know what? Like, fuck it. I'm going to be me. I'm going to have sovereignty. I'm going to set the boundary. I'm going to set the standard. I'm going to create the life that I desire. I trust my desires. My desire is holy. My rage is holy. My love is holy. And it ripples across their entire life, their business, their relationships, everything.
So potent, and I can resonate with many different aspects of your story. And I think specifically even where you were before your Lyme diagnosis, where I know
Yeah.
so many women actually start their spiritual journey is with the body
Yes.
image, or disordered eating,
Yeah.
or physical pain that's happening in the body. And I believe that's because the body is our gateway to deeper healing.
Yes.
And often our body is screaming at us, it is speaking to us to try and get our attention. And what I'm hearing is that your body was speaking really loudly around all of this suppressed emotion, and living as this, version of yourself that wasn't really who you are, who you came here to be. And you had to go to those dark places, into those depths of that pain and that suffering to liberate yourself from it. And just really hearing
Absolutely.
like that reclamation of all parts of you, of the rage, of the bitchiness, of the fieriness, and not just being this like polite, pretty version of yourself that we
Yeah.
think that we need to be in order to get love. Right. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, definitely a huge like shedding and letting go of this persona that,
Yeah.
we as women, I call it the good girl archetype that many of
Yeah.
us play. It's like, okay, I'm no longer willing to sacrifice my
Yeah.
well-being and who I'm meant to be for the sake of looking good on the outside.
Hell yeah. I like to say with the good girl, like she'll keep you safe, but she'll keep you dead. Like it's not a life, it's a half life, right? But you're safe. But is that safe? No.
Yeah, you're not alive.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you shared a bit about the deep feminine, and
Yeah.
I personally am here for the deep stuff. Like, I feel like that's what my
Hell
soul
yeah.
came here for. I'm like, no surface level bullshit. Like, I am here for the deep feminine. And I'd love for
Same.
you to elaborate on that more of like, what do you mean when you refer to the deep feminine?
Absolutely. So, I have a couple of different frameworks to describe what I mean by the deep feminine, but the deep feminine to me is the complete and initiated integration of the light feminine and the dark feminine. It is the mature feminine embodied. The feminine was a tree. I see the light feminine as the branches and the leaves. The light filters through the leaves and she is flowy and she moves. I see the dark feminine as the trunk, just like really unshakable. And then I see the deep feminine as the roots. So incredibly connected to the pulse of what's true, incredibly connected to the wisdom of all that is, incredibly connected to the earth. I see the deep feminine as all of the strongest aspects of the light feminine and all of the most potent aspects of the dark feminine. And I work with all three archetypes in my business, but Her Alchemy is primarily devoted to spreading the wisdom of the deep feminine. The light feminine has I work with archetypes a lot in my work as a way to help women become more of themselves. And, we all have a million and one feminine archetypes within ourselves. And the light feminine, I see her as the lover. I see her as the nurturer. I see her as the healer. Really beautiful, beautiful things. The dark feminine is like the phoenix. The dark feminine is the bitch. The dark feminine is the villain, the, quote unquote villain. I don't see her as the villain, but other people will project that onto her. And because she's integrated her inner villain, it doesn't affect her. The dark feminine is the transformer, and the deep feminine is the queen. The deep feminine is the wise woman. She's hot and she's holy. She's raw and she's regal. So she's really just like this integrated feminine force, and I feel her in my womb. I feel the light feminine in my heart. The dark feminine is very like cervix energy. And I see the deep feminine in the womb. So, yeah, there's a bunch of different frameworks that I use to describe the deep feminine.
Beautiful. Yeah. And something that you really pointed out is like the mature feminine. And I think that there are a lot of misinterpretations of what the feminine means. And there's a lot
Exactly.
of expressions of the feminine that are not integrated, that are not embodied. And so for
Yeah.
someone who hasn't necessarily embodied that mature, deep feminine yet, what are some of the
Yeah.
ways that it might be presenting in their personalities or in their lives or their behaviors when they haven't quite integrated it yet?
Such a good question. So the deep feminine is about like the one word that I use to describe her besides powerful is sovereign. Like she is sovereign. And if you are not integrated in your deep feminine energy, you will do anything to make other people like you. And it will feel like you are dying when other people misunderstand you. It will feel like you will sacrifice what you know to be true to keep someone else comfortable. Maybe you still have some sisterhood wounds that you're not quite aware of yet that come out in random ways. Like you feel competitive with other women, like you want to like put down other women. There's not this like abundance energy. There's like, oh, it's like an eye for an eye. Like it's either me or her. And like I'm better than her or I'm less than her. The deep feminine doesn't see herself as better than or less than. She just is, and every woman is. But yeah, if you don't feel like there is this source of power and wisdom that you can come back to in your body again and again and again, I would just say, well, first of all, there is, and you just haven't found it yet. And that's like why, you work with women like us to help you find that. But the deep feminine, it's just this energy of like, you have your own back, like
Mhm.
no matter what, like there is no amount of villainization or gossiping or manipulation or whatever that would make you doubt yourself. Like, that you're in integrity. You're humble. And of course, you look at yourself and of course, you receive feedback. But at the end of the day, you're so freaking rooted in what you know to be true. And like, that's so rare in a woman just to like have that amount of power.
Mm. Yeah, I love how you described that. And it really speaks to the layer of my work, which is all around truth telling. And when you said rooted in your truth, that's what I was, when you were saying sovereign, I was like, yeah, a
Yeah.
woman who's just so rooted in herself. She trusts herself so deeply. And yeah, one thing that you describe when someone is maybe not there yet is this constant need for external validation where you're either asking people's opinions or you're subtly or not so subtly changing your behavior or your appearance
Yes. Yes.
in order to receive love or attention or in order
Yes.
to not disappoint other people or
Yes.
not you don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And
Yes.
that version of women to me is, for women who are wanting to step in their power, like that has to die. Like we
Literally. Yeah.
cannot be living in our truth if we are putting how the world sees us on like a higher priority than who we really are and how we really feel and what feels like our truth. So
Ooh,
yeah, I'm
so
curious,
good.
for women who are in that place who are still seeking that external validation and maybe they know that they're doing that or maybe it's showing up in these subtle ways. What might be a first step or what might
Yeah.
be a way that they can start to connect more with that like deep feminine wisdom?
The first step is to know that you are safe in being vulnerable. So a lot of the time I see a huge blocker for women on their growth path is where they actually like the persona is so well crafted and they're constantly more that they're morphing and they're changing and the narrative is really crafted. But when something comes up, like when there's like an initiation from an outer force or a conflict with another person or whatever it is, there's this quality, and I hope I'm explaining this correctly because it's hard to explain, but there's this quality that happens in a woman before she is truly initiated into her deep feminine, where she knows that she is safe in complete vulnerability. Like she is ready to get stripped down, no matter what that means for her. She's ready to sit with the parts of herself that make her possibly feel shame. And she's ready to love that shame and to work with it and to alchemize it versus the woman who's not quite ready. She's like, I can't even touch that. I can't even do that. It's like, okay, then there's not the capacity there yet, you know. But for me, it's required a lot of self belief. And, you know, that energy that I described of like having your own back, that's part of it, of being like, I'm really powerful when I'm just honest. Even if I'm saying something that people aren't agreeing with, even if I'm presenting as quote unquote weak, even if I'm really raw and I'm not fulfilling like the role that I'm supposed to be fulfilling right now, the fact that I'm willing to go there with myself means that I'm powerful,
Right.
right? Like, and so that's the energy that you have to like really step into your deep feminine. And
Right.
also, women in their deep feminine do not tear other women down. I know I mentioned this earlier, but I'm seeing this across the coaching industry in so many different ways. And it's really upsetting because there's truly like more than enough to go around in terms of abundance, in terms of respect, in terms of love. And we all have our own unique thing to give. And women in their deep feminine are not taking jabs at other women. They are opening their heart and serving their medicine with fire, water, earth, whatever is true for them in that moment. So I just wanted to kind of like point out that I love the coaching industry so much. Like I love that unicorns like us could go and create careers for ourselves. Like thank God. And like I had this conversation with my friend Bryn the other week. She was like, yeah, my husband, you know, told me the other day, or my fiance told me the other day, he's like, you know, men like support each other in this industry. Like if women actually just genuinely supported each other and like there was no like out of the corner of the mouth, like passive aggressive, like literally we'd all be like 10x ahead. Like it would just like that's the vision that I see. Right. And that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that there won't be triggers that come. Of course there will be. But then that comes back to the thing around the vulnerability instead of pointing fingers, instead of, you know, asserting that, you know, you're always the innocent one, like really like feeling vulnerable and being like, oh, cool. Like what's coming up for me here?
Yeah. Yeah. We love Bryn, by the way. We've had her on the show a couple times. Yeah.
Oh, Bryn Taylor.
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
amazing.
I love her. I love how we have so many shared connections. This is
Yeah.
just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm really hearing this piece around in order to access this deep, mature feminine and to be in your sovereignty and to be in that space of self trust and that like deep knowing of self, that there has to be a willingness to get messy. There has to
Oof.
be a
Yes.
willingness to be with the parts of ourselves that we've been hiding or avoiding in order to
Yes.
keep up the persona. And there is something so powerful. I love that you shared this. Like when you're willing to go to those deep places with yourself, it's hard. Like it is
Literally.
not
Yeah.
easy work. And
No, it feels like you're dying, actually. I want to say that. Like it literally feels like you're dying.
And that's the reason why a lot of people don't go there because they're afraid to go there. And for
Right.
myself, as someone who experienced a lot of challenges with my mental health in my 20s, I was really afraid that if I actually let myself feel the
Yeah.
deeper feelings that I would get stuck there, that I wouldn't make it
Yeah.
through, that it would make it worse. But what I found is that when I started meeting myself in those deeper places and letting myself go to that deep grief, that deep sadness, really looking at the anger that was suppressed that I didn't even know was suppressed until I started really uncovering it. And that's where the liberation started to come through. It's like when I started letting myself feel those feelings and express those feelings and emote those feelings, that's where my true self really started coming online. And not everyone can meet you in those spaces. There are some people who are either going to judge it as like weak or they're going to judge it as too much. Either of those, that's often what will be projected. But what I have found is that the more that I have met myself in those deep, raw spaces and then shown up authentically to sisterhood, to connection with my partner,
That,
that's
yeah,
where like that deep intimacy and that deep connection and authenticity happens because you're not wearing a mask. You're not
that,
pretending. People can actually feel you. And when we're wearing masks, it like
yes,
creates the visual that's coming up for me right now is like it creates almost this invisible wall that blocks
yes,
level of connection. It's like it's a facade. So people can't
yes.
actually connect to the real you because there is this barrier of connection that you can't really see, but people can feel it.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah, that just made me
Exactly. I'm
cry.
like, no, literally, I'm like, literally, I feel like I'm in church right now because that's exactly how it feels like. And I don't know any other podcast episode that is talking about this because I'm like, she's naming something so important because I have always been really introverted. I've also struggled with mental health. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder when I was like 13, generalized anxiety, etc. Like so many different diagnoses that I've now learned how to work with and integrate. And like I'm sure you relate, our incredible capacity to feel is also our greatest gift, right? I am very introverted, but I just assumed that like I just wasn't a social person and that maybe I just don't relate to people. And then I did all of this deep work for 5 years on myself in my 20s and went to the deepest depths and literally like the darkest corners of my psyche and like felt everything. And I in that process stripped away everything I never was, took back everything I always was. There was no mask. Like when I emerged from that initiatory period, I felt like raw skin. It was so vulnerable. And I literally like felt like, okay, I'm ready to meet my husband, God. Like, okay. And I just got this hit, like, download Hinge. And I downloaded Hinge. Literally, he was the first picture that popped up. I'm like, and people hate me when I tell that story, but I'm like, listen, I struggled enough in like every other category. Like, this was easy. Thank you. It was not easy to allow myself to be fully loved for the first time,
Mm.
by the way, but it was easy to find him. But I came to the first date literally just like there was a moment where I was like, okay, so I could either bullshit this or I could be completely honest. Because one of the first questions she asked me was like, hey, so like, tell me about you. And literally, I was like 1 month out from like a 5 year completely shamanic experience. And so I could either be like, well, and tell him some bullshit story or tell him the truth about exactly who I am. And I chose the latter. I told him the truth about exactly who I am. And there was a moment where I was like, okay, he's either going to like get up and leave or like ghost me tomorrow or, do what he did, which was he looked at me and he was just like, okay, so where have you been? Like literally, like I've been on the apps for years. Where the fuck have you been? And I was like, yeah, I was busy. I was busy doing
I'm
my thing.
busy doing my work,
Exactly.
preparing
Preparing
for
for
this.
you. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I really experienced the same thing when I moved to Austin and I started meeting other girlfriends because I've never had a lot of girlfriends. I just I lost a lot of my friends when I went through Lyme, and after that I met Charlie right away, and then there was COVID, so I didn't really have this like social part of me until I moved to Austin. And I realized that my truth, it's like the best filtration process, right? So if I'm showing up as fully me and I feel like the freak in the room, then those aren't my people. If I show up as fully me and I feel so fucking connected to each and every woman in there, those are my people.
Mm.
And it's often with the women who are also in their deep feminine, like Audrey, like Orica, like, those are two of my best friends. And I've also, the point that I was trying to make was I've also experienced the heartbreak of not being met there with some women, and it's really painful. And professional relationships too, where something comes up and I'm like, okay, amazing, like let's talk about this, and then I'm just not met at all. And in fact, it's like the exact opposite. It's incredibly painful
Mm.
to be standing in your full truth and to have something like they're not willing to say the unsaid thing, but you are. And you're just sort of standing there like, Okay. It's incredibly painful. So it takes a lot of courage to be the kind of woman who leads with that level of vulnerability and strength and power and truth.
It sure does. Courage is like a number one ingredient. Yeah. And I've very similarly felt that way. I think it was last year where I went through a big reorientation with my female friendships. And I
Yeah.
had three friendships where I just constantly felt like I wasn't being met.
Yeah.
And I could either make up the story that like my standards are too high or that like I don't know, that I'm too much or I'm too needy. Or I can be like, actually, these are my needs in friendship. And if someone's being really flaky or they're not actually putting
Yeah.
effort in, then that doesn't feel enlivening. It doesn't feel good for me to keep investing energy in that way. And so I could have either just like ghosted or just stopped reaching out. But instead, I was like, okay, I'm a woman of truth and I am a truth teller. And so I'm going to bring this honest conversation to each of these women. And I'm going to share
Yeah.
like from a vulnerable place, not from a place of blame, but of like, hey, it feels, I'm feeling really like
Yeah.
there's something happening in our friendship where I'm not feeling met and I want to be closer to you. Is there something going on that I'm not aware of? Or is this something that you actually want or that you're able to show up for? And it was so clear. Like one of my friends was able to say, like, thank you for sharing this. Like, I really
Mm.
appreciate you sharing this. And I want to be able to show up this way. Like, I appreciate you telling me how I can be a better friend. And the other two were like, I actually don't have capacity for this. And this isn't the level that I can
Yeah.
to or that I have capacity for. Since then, it's just been, I've had so much more peace in my relationships with women where I'm just being honest
Mm.
about like what actually feels true in connection. And there's this concept of right relationship that I love, and we can be in right relationship with our body, we can be in right relationship with food, we can be in right relationship in our romantic relationships and in friendships. And like right relationship is about, to me, how close is someone in your life based on the resonance. I can still love these people, I can still care about them, but it doesn't mean that they have to be up close and personal in my inner world as my closest people. And finding that right relationship so that I can love them and they can love me, and we can create space for the people who are meant to be in our inner circles. Just, some of those examples of
Yes.
willing to have those hard conversations, and it usually either leads to a deepening or it leads to a death. And
Yeah.
that is why most people don't have the conversation, is because they're afraid of the death. They're afraid that the
That
relationship will change and that they're going to lose this person and that they won't be okay without this person. And so the courage is like, are you willing to be honest no matter what?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the good girl is not willing to be honest no matter what, right? The good girl is okay with a silent inner death in, pursuit of quote unquote peace, but the deep feminine woman is not.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
well said. And I feel like that literally is where we need to end, because I was like,
Yeah. So
this
good.
is it. It's potent. Yeah, this is
So
it.
potent. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
So good.
So good. Oh my God. I loved our conversation. And I feel like this is just the beginning of something. So,
Me too.
really grateful for your wisdom today. And
Oh my
really, yeah, just
God.
loving all of these pieces around the deep feminine and the full embodied expression. And yeah, being in that mature wise woman and in that queen inside that sovereignty. So, thank you for
Oh
your
my
wisdom
gosh.
today.
Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I feel like, the specific flavor of work that we do with the feminine, even if we each have our own style, I do feel this like sense of camaraderie whenever I talk to another woman who's like really doing this work. I'm just like,
Mhm.
yes, like it's a movement, bringing women back home to what's true.
Yes. Yeah. And one piece that I want to just circle back around to as we're closing is women who are listening to this are like, okay, maybe I want to go there, but I'm afraid. And I just want to
Mm.
emphasize that neither me nor Megan or any woman who's been on this journey of accessing these really, really deep emotions and deep parts of themselves have done it alone. And this work is not meant to be done alone. Like, we have to be
Yeah.
witnessed, we have to be in a safe space with
Yes.
someone who can hold us so that we can access those parts. And then we learn how to do it ourselves. And so I just really want to invite any women who are listening. They're like, wow, this is the direction that I want to go. Like, lean in for support. Put yourself in spaces where you have mentorship, where you have guidance, where you are in spaces where you can be held to access these deep parts of yourself. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, with that said, Megan, where can our listeners find you and find out more about your work?
Absolutely. Well, of course, I'm very active on Instagram. I am at Megan Claire Hatfield. You can also type in Her Alchemy, which is the name of my business, and you'll see my website pop up. My website is meganclairehatfield.com. And yeah, if this episode resonated with you or touched on anything that you really feel powerfully aligned with, DM either, me, and both of us are just happy to talk with you further about it.
Amazing. We're going to link all of your info in the show notes so our listeners can come follow you and that they can keep learning from you. And similarly, for our listeners, you can find out more about the embodiment work that I do on my website, amynatalieco.com, and continue listening to the feminine frequency for more feminine frequency magic. So thank you so much for being here, Megan. I
Thank you
appreciate
for having me.